The landscape of Charlottesville, Virginia has now changed. Hundreds of people cheered as crews hoisted the statues of Confederate generals Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson away on a flatbed truck Saturday morning. They also hauled away the city's Lewis Clark and Sacagawea monument. The Robert E. Lee Memorial became the center of a white supremacist rally in 2017 after civil rights advocates demanded it come down. The chaotic protests turned deadly. A self-described white supremacist drove his car into a crowd of counter-demonstrators, killing one woman and injuring dozens more. City officials say the statues will be temporarily stored until they decide where to move them. Many people hope removing the monuments will help Charlottesville and the nation move forward while reconciling its past. For more on this, I want to bring in the mayor of Charlottesville, Virginia, Nekiah Walker. Mayor Walker, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. You are a Charlottesville native and the city's, so great to have you. You are also the city's first Black female mayor. You've spent many years working as an advocate for racial and social justice. So how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling pretty good. We had a great weekend, and you know, it's always great when you don't have a repeat of the image that you just showed on the screen that happened in 2017. But it was one of those moments where people feel like there is some progress that was made from the events of that summer. The one that you highlighted was just one of several that we had here, but it feels like you know, kind of reconciling what we have coined here, the summer of hate.
And as you know, as a native of Charlottesville, there are historic ties in that town to the Confederacy. Over the weekend, student activist Za'Anna Bryant joined CBSN and offered a response to critics who say removing the statue is removing a piece of history. Let's listen to what she said.
At the time of emancipation, Charlottesville and the surrounding area was majority Black. And you don't see that narrative by having Confederate monuments standing in the center of parks, towering over whole communities. What you see is a romanticized version of the South. You see memorabilia that makes people feel good about the Civil War, but it doesn't tell the story of the South losing. It doesn't tell the story of the Confederacy falling. And so I think that we cannot erase history. We can't edit it. In fact, history already happened. So people can Google, people can use textbooks. There are many other resources. There are whole museums that teach people about those legacies and about the history of what happened here. But what I think we're doing with removing these statues is we're no longer offering a platform for white supremacy. And I think that by deplatforming and decentering those harmful narratives that perpetuate violence and that perpetuate oppression is one of the most powerful things that we can do.
Very eloquent response. And Mayor Walker, what is your response to critics who oppose removing these statues?
Yeah, you know, and what Zai said was actually what I think we all need to focus on. Those statues were erected to uphold basic untruths. And at this time where we're also talking about critical race theory, and which is just telling accurate history, it offers us all the opportunity to ask, how did those statues end up here? What were they revered for? What was the lesson that McIntyre and others who poured money into those statues in 1917 and through 1924, what were they trying to tell the nation? And I said on Saturday, when you want to uphold whiteness as supreme, which is getting us into most of the trouble that we're in this country today, that is one way that you do it. You erect statues, whether you're talking about individuals who were treasonous, whether you're talking about individuals who, when you're talking about the lost cause, we're talking about people who did not do anything to uphold the morals that the Constitution stated that we wanted to uphold as a country, and taking them down all across this country, but particularly in Charlottesville, one of the most political communities in this country, gives us all the opportunity, top university, right? Give us all the opportunity to look at what was the accurate history here.
Right, exactly, as you pointed out, at the top university there. So the eyes of the nation are really on Charlottesville in many ways. How does Charlottesville, go forward from here and heal from this history of racial divides? And how do you think that the rest of the country can learn from what Charlottesville is evolving into?
So we have so much work to do. We still have, even what the president was just discussing, we have violence that stems from poverty, violence that stems when you create situations where individuals have very little opportunity. We have to reconcile that. We have a wealth gap that's probably, one of the highest in the country. We have 22% of our citizens who live in poverty. We have public housing units that people didn't upkeep, wanted to fall apart, didn't think about it after urban renewal when they removed people from their homes. We have an education gap here where there are children who can go to top universities like University of Virginia, Brown, Yale, Harvard, and then we have kids that don't ever have the opportunity to even dream up those kind of opportunities. So we're facing the same plight in our small area and with a very wealthy area. At that, we have an area median income that's almost $100,000 in this area. And we have family members who earned $13,000 or $14,000 a year. And of course, we have an unhoused population. So what we're grappling with across the country, we're grappling with in Charlottesville. Removing those statues is one small step, even though it's one important step. But the most important step is, how do you deploy resources? How do you give back to people that have been intentionally, policies have been put in place to intentionally destroy? We have to combat what the removing the statues help do is people, when they're in their living rooms, when they're in their offices and they're talking to their friends and family, they know people who are out in the world upholding the very things those statues were put in place to uphold. And so when we talk about a reckoning around racism, around the illusion of white supremacy, it starts with being able to tell the truth. And we can see as a nation that that truth is often based on whose truth and who is empowered to tell those truths. And so we have to eliminate the disconnect there. And something that I heard in one of the responses to the gun violence epidemic, we have to make sure that we don't blame people, even if they're out there perpetuating, for barely being able to survive the conditions that America has put on some of its most impoverished people and their response to it, because that's where violence stems from. So we're facing all of those here and all of as the rest of the nation. But here, I hope what continues here is that we continue to have these very difficult and uncomfortable conversations, and that we align those very difficult and uncomfortable conversations with the millions and billions of dollars that it's going to take to get our citizens on a more equal playing field. And the conversations around equity are happening here every day, and some people understand them, more than others, just like other places in this country. But what we're trying to do here is not give people room to stand on platforms that uphold hate and the destruction of our most vulnerable citizens.
Charlottesville Mayor Nekiah Walker, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.